Can you recognize these Hollywood icons just by looking at their faces today? We'll start by showing you a recent photo. You'll have just 5 seconds to guess who it is. Right after that, we'll reveal a throwback photo and the name that once lit up the screen. Some are still shining in the spotlight, while others have faded from view over the years. Keep track of how many you get right and drop your score in the comments. Ready? Let's jump into the first one. Al Pacino, at 85 years old, shined in The Godfather and Scarface with his unique intensity. Robert De Niro, now 81 years old, is known for iconic roles in Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. Meryl Streep, who is 75 years old, moves audiences with powerful performances in Sophie's Choice and Kramer vs. Kramer. Harrison Ford, today 82 years old, is the legendary Han Solo and Indiana Jones, full of charisma. Sylvester Stallone, at 78 years old, became a legend with Rocky and Rambo, a symbol of strength. Arnold Schwarzenegger, at 77 years old, dominated screens in Terminator and Conan the Barbarian. Tom Cruise, currently 62 years old, stars in Top Gun and Born on the 4th of July, always a big name. Dustin Hoffman, who is 87 years old, brings depth to films like Rain Man and Kramer vs. Kramer. Jack Nicholson, at 88 years old, is unforgettable in The Shining and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Michelle Pfeiffer, today 67 years old, is synonymous with elegance in Scarface and Batman Returns. Sigourney Weaver, at 75 years old, made her mark with strength in Alien and Aliens. Goldie Hawn, currently 79 years old, won fans with her humor in Cactus Flower and Death Becomes Her. Richard Gere, who is 75 years old, is pure charm in American Gigolo and Pretty Woman. John Travolta, at 71 years old, is the face of the 70s in Saturday Night Fever and Grease. Jane Fonda, at 87 years old, acts with strength and passion in Clute and Coming Home. Eddie Murphy, today 64 years old, dominates comedy with Beverly Hills Cop and Trading Places. Mel Gibson, at 69 years old, is versatile and intense in Mad Max and Lethal Weapon. Robin Williams, who passed away at 63 years old, was pure talent in Dead Poets Society. Julia Roberts, currently 57 years old, captivated the world with her smile in Pretty Woman. Demi Moore, at 62 years old, impresses with her talent in Ghost and Indecent Proposal. Cheryl Ladd, now 74 years old, lit up the 70s as Kreese in Charlie's Angels at age 27. Tom Selleck, at 80 years old, became iconic as Magnum in Magnum, P.I. at 35. David Hasselhoff, 72 years old, starred in Knight Rider at 30 and later in Baywatch at 37. Alyssa Milano, 52 years old, charmed audiences in Who's the Boss? At 12 and Charmed at 26. Don Johnson, now 75 years old, became famous as Sonny in Miami Vice at 35. Heather Locklear, at 63 years old, stood out in Dynasty at 20 and Melrose Place at 32. Scott Baio, now 64 years old, stole hearts as Chachi in Happy Days at just 16. John Stamos, at 61 years old, won over fans as Jesse in Full House at 24. Linda Gray, at 84 years old, moved audiences as Sue Ellen in Dallas at 38. Lonnie Anderson, at 79 years old, became unforgettable as Jennifer in WKRP in Cincinnati at 33. Michael J. Fox, now 64 years old, skyrocketed in Back to the Future at 24. Jaclyn Smith, 79 years old, was a standout face in Charlie's Angels at 31. Pamela Sue Martin, now 71 years old, gained fame as Fallon in Dynasty at 28. Catherine Bach, now 71 years old, became legendary as Daisy Duke in The Dukes of Hazzard at 25. Heather Thomas, now 67 years old, won fans worldwide with her stunning beauty and sculpted figure. So how did you do in this challenge? Tell us in the comments and let us know who surprised you the most. If you enjoyed this nostalgic journey, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend who also loves classic movies and TV shows.